Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to go over a few things while everybody gets logged in. This class, thankfully, we were able to reschedule. Peg was going to be doing this class at the Fair Oaks store, but it was while we had all that snow and ice going on. So this is thankfully happening now because this is going to be an interesting one. I've been looking forward to this. Um, so for those of you who might be attending for the first time today, this is a webinar format. Peg will be taking questions during the presentation, maybe a couple times or at the end. If you have questions during the class, you'll open your Q&A box, send those questions in, and I'll be relaying them to her. If you have any technology issues or anything else, please feel free to send me a chat. I'm going to get that opened up right now. And just a quick note that we are recording today. So if you need to leave the call early for any reason, you're welcome to access the link tomorrow on our YouTube channel. It generally takes about 24 hours for us to get those loaded up. And we'll also be sending the link out via a follow-up email with the class coupon. Those usually also come out about 24 hours after the class. Sometimes it could take a day and a half. I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions, just want to reiterate, please feel free to send those to me. And Peg, I will let you take it over.
Very good, thank you. And first thing off, I need to ask Danny, is it possible to dim that light at all? Because it's pretty bright. Do you need it on
No,
for your
we're-
clarity?
Okay.
It's kind of in my eyes.
We need you to
Okay.
see.
Okay, we got that clarified. Now, it's for me, this is a fun thing. We have looked in this area at primarily a coating of ice. We could have ice skated in my garden for several weeks. It was slow to go away. So it's kind of exciting to talk about some of the things that you can do soon now that the ice is melted and the ground is not completely frozen. And so we're going to focus today on what seeding in the garden can do for you, primarily with hardy annuals. There are those annuals that love to reseed themselves once they're established, and or you can get them started and then save some seeds from them, shake them around where you want them to be, and they really enhance the garden in so many ways. They're beautiful. They are pollinator plants, and so they are good for the environment. They're wonderful because you need to deadhead them to keep them going into and through the summer in some cases, bringing them in to enjoy the fresh flowers inside. And then I'm going to talk to you at the end a little bit about how you can dry some of these. And actually, I'll talk about it as we go along, probably. How you can dry some of these for everlasting arrangements and show you a picture. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, but let's bring up the first picture to sort of set the stage for this. I have a large area, and actually I have hardy annuals that reseed themselves, and or I save seeds to sprinkle them elsewhere, or to be sure I have plenty that come up that will tolerate cold. In fact, not just tolerate it, but like it. Okay. They can be planted in the fall, or they can be planted now as soon as the ground can be worked. And by working, that doesn't mean turning with a shovel. That means pressing the soil and opening up small little places and dropping seeds in and very lightly covering them. The one area that I'm really concentrating heavily on today for several reasons is a steep bank that was formed when years ago when they built a bunch of houses in the area and created a retention pond. And this was so steep, I said to them, this is not safe to mow. let's turn it into an environmentally friendly garden that holds the soil, it won't erode, and supports our wildlife. Now, I've done that for a number of years and it has been beautiful. Yes, I have to do some weeding in it. And it reached that point in the annuals area where I really concentrated on annuals. Annuals like some of the ones I'll show you, plus some of those that are not winter hardy, like zinnias, which the bees love. And I love to bring those in as cut flowers. Okay, the grass got the upper hand. The weeds got the upper hand. And so I said, I'm just going to start over with this because I don't mind weeding some things, but I do not want to spend my life out there weeding. And so in the next picture, I'll show you kind of what I did. Now, I did not take pictures of that particular area. This happens to be in my vegetable garden when I planted in the broccoli and the cabbage and etc. And I used newspapers, not just one layer, but 3 or 4 layers of newspapers, wet them down and topped them off with shredded bark. Or you could use pine straw if you wanted to. Now, an awful lot of people don't get the newspaper anymore, so they are not going to have a lot of newspapers. You can also use cardboard, and you get a lot of cardboard in deliveries these days. Plus, we recycle all of our cardboard, and a lot of times we have cardboard if we haven't compressed it already that we're perfectly willing to share with any of you who want to stop by and say, do you have any cardboard today? Because that truly, it breaks down. Okay, the water goes through in this, so it's not a water issue, and it helps keep down a lot of those weeds. And so I actually, in that area, I put down cardboard and mulched on top of it. And no, I didn't put mulch on top of it. I put leaf grow on top of it. I put compost that I had made that were leaves. But you can also buy the bags of leaf grow, which is composted leaves, and very good for the soil, and great then to seed things into. Yes, you are going to get some airborne seeds, weed seeds. It's going to happen. You can't help it. But I will have stopped all of those that had taken a hold of this by doing that. And then I think in the next picture, yes, this shows how you go in and you put the leaf mold on top of that, okay? Which I did there. I did newspaper and I did also the cardboard. And let it stay completely in place. So I lost that ability to seed in the fall, which I like to do. And I maybe in the next picture, I show, no, I don't. So we're going to talk about some of the things that are beneficial to the garden. Okay, I did that fall not seed anything in. I wanted those weeds to completely go away. But then in the spring, I seeded some things in, and I planted a few of the plants that were established for the garden center and some that I had grown from seed inside. Okay, here are some of the plants that are very annual but hardy. They like these like the cool season, except I have to say the white flower that you see in the front is matricaria, Matricaria. Feverfew is what it's often called. It seeds itself. It seeds itself in a lot of places. And it seeds itself in part shade, which is incredible. It loves full sun. It'll take the hottest afternoon sun. But it will also grow where you get good dapple light through the day. And it kind of spots itself here and there in the garden, and I absolutely love it. And if I cut back and I bring in flowers to enjoy inside, it will bloom most of the summer, which is incredible. It is long blooming. Now, the blue that you see there is larkspur, and it loves the cool seasons, and it will bloom also May, June. Uh, Probably won't go into July, but it'll bloom April, May, June. And if you deadhead, if you cut some, you can dry those by turning them upside down, and I'll tell you more about that later, and bundling them. They won't be perfect, but they'll retain that blue. But you can also bring them in to enjoy them in arrangements. So larkspur is a hardy annual. It can be seeded in the fall, and it can be seeded in now. We have those seeds, and I highly suggest that you purchase some of these seeds, plant a few of them in areas where you want this to happen, and then save a few from those, or save a few seeds to plant again in the fall. Planting in actually early September is ideal. Okay, let's go to the next one and see what we're coming up with. Okay, this is the larkspur, and it's all casual. It's very mixed up in that area that I'm growing these things. And you can see the red of the poppies. There are a number of different types of poppies, and they are all hardy annuals. They love the cool soil. They love some stratification, but getting them in while it's still cool, even through March, is fine. And hopefully they'll all bloom this year. Come back to me for just a moment, Danny. The interesting thing is they also have the bread. I don't think you can even see this, they're too small. The bread seed poppy, which is very interesting. That's the one that forms the really neat seed heads that dry well, and you can use them in dried flower arrangements. But here again, by cutting some of these and bringing them inside to enjoy them, you are deadheading and encouraging that plant to continue to bloom. And when these seed heads have formed, you can cut a few for your dried arrangements later. You can also cut a few to save and put them in an envelope, label what they are, and then be able to reseed again in the fall. Okay, let's see what's coming up next. The next one. Okay, here. They're wonderful, wonderful for the birds, bees, and butterflies, for the environment. The bees absolutely love the larkspur. And the next one, Danny. Here's a wonderful, wonderful poppy. That's the Iceland poppies, the Nutical. There are several different varieties, from the little orange ones that we think of as the veterans poppies too, and they come in different colors too. But these I like to use primarily at the edges of the border, and that's where I sow them most of the time. And they blend in so well. I When people tell you give these things plenty of space, plant those poppies a foot apart or 2 feet apart, or plant your larkspur, plant a little denser than that. Plant them a little closer together, because they're all ground covers, covering the ground, and the less sunshine that goes underneath them, the fewer weeds you're going to have. Okay, so plant a little denser than it's recommended. That doesn't mean a wad in one place. You may have to pull away some of them to give them room to grow, but plant densely. And in the next picture, this is a mixture of things that you are going to love or hate. And I happen to love them. The taller plant that you see with the little golden seed heads or flower heads is bronze fennel. Now you can cook with this. And the grandchildren, particularly the younger ones, absolutely, this is one of the first places they go to chew on the fennel, the bronze fennel. Now, it has a very deep root. And so it's not easy to pull it up. Therefore, you can do one of two things. You can either, before they seed, cut away most of those flowerings, which I don't do because the birds love the seeds. And so I just put up with it and know that I'm going to have to really take the shovel to some of that and dig it out. Okay. Or put some newspaper or a piece of cardboard over it and let it suffocate. Okay. But I have a large stand of this because I've got the space and it is well loved and mixed all into that and that have seeded into that are the echinacea. I have a lot of varieties of echinacea, and my favorites are the old-fashioned pink ones, and they seed readily. And you can see how they seeded among this fennel. And in front of that particular area, you're going to have other things going on mixed into that. I have that section that I showed you that are primarily annuals, the hardy annuals, but somewhat mixed in, and further down from there are primarily perennials with spaces to put some of these hardy annuals. Absolutely love the purple flower. It is a perennial most of the time. Certainly will reseed itself. You will need to remove some of the seed heads, or I don't really do that because the birds love it. I just pull out the ones I don't want. And it's Verbena, Verbena bonariensis. Verbena bonariensis. And the other one is a type of Rudbeckia. Rudbeckia hirta, Hirta. And it's not a dependable perennial, but frequently comes back, but always drops its seeds. And if you deadhead that a little bit, bring some in to enjoy in the house as cut flowers, it will bloom all summer long. So come back to me for just a moment and let's talk about some of these other seeds. I have one that I found downstairs that's Verbena vervain, Vervain. It is very similar to the one I showed you, but it is not as tall. So this is a good one from seed also. I told you about the poppies. They're wonderful. This Nudical has a lot of different colors in it, and I love that. The feverfew is available in seeds. It's wonderful. The larkspur available in seeds. Wonderful. The California poppy, the orange one that you're familiar with, is low growing. Wonderful at the front of the border. And then there's also, and I don't have pictures of this, there's a one called Love in a Mist. And this is a hardy annual. It takes the cold soil and likes the cold soil and will come up in time to bloom in the current year. So those are all really good ones. We'll see a couple of other pictures and then we'll come back to some of these. So in the next picture, we have yarrow. Now, there are a lot of varieties of yarrow, and they are perennial. This one is the broader flowered, okay, and gold plate is the variety of this one. It gets tall. It gets 3.5, 4 feet tall with the blossoms. And the beauty of this plant is, and the birds love the seeds from this, you can cut that when it is in its prime, when it has just opened nicely. You can cut that and it dries naturally and stays forever. I've had some in arrangements for 3 or 4 years. It's so beautiful. And by cutting some of it, you are encouraging it to continue to rebloom because it will throw out buds lower in that foliage. You're also seeing that I've edged here with my absolute favorite butterfly weed, Asclepias, Asclepias. But this is a very special Asclepias. I'm not terribly fond of some of the others that just run all over the place. This one does not. It is a bush. It does reseed, and I save seeds to scatter it all around because this is for the monarchs. And boy, they do come to it. Plus, it also is a good cut flower. It's wonderful. And the seed heads are very attractive. And so this is a very valuable plant to me. It's Asclepias tuberosa, Tuberosa, butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa. I think there's a better picture in the next. Yes, this is exactly what it looks like when it comes into bloom. And it stays vibrant like that for quite some period of time. Now, this is an area, as I told you, it's very steep. It does drain well. It was heavy duty clay to start with. And I worked in a lot of the 3/8 inch stone into the top several inches of this. I actually used a fair amount of sand at the tippy top because I knew I wanted to grow this plant and I knew that I wanted to grow lavender, and this plant demand excellent drainage. They do not want to grow in an area that stays wet for very long, okay? And when I'm talking about this, it's a good thing to look in your garden right now because if your garden is like mine, finally we've had some warmer days and some sunshine and the ice is melting. It all isn't completely gone in the shady spots of my garden, but most of it now is on its way out. That way, you can take a walk through the garden every now and then and decide, is that area draining well? Because if it isn't, you need to look at it and watch over it and see how long does it stay wet, okay? But this is Asclepias tuberosa. And in the next picture, we have Clara. Thank God for my wonderful, beautiful family, but these great grandchildren are a joy. And Clara is 7 now. She's first grade. And she loves the flowers and the garden. And what she's doing here right now, if you can see it, she is blowing the fine seeds from that Asclepias tuberosa. And it's such fun because they form a lot of these seeds. And again, those seeds are eaten by the birds. But she's blowing them because it's fun to do that. Okay. And I really don't mind. And you can see that there's a little roadway there for maintenance for the community. But that's just the tippy top of that area that I planted specifically for the pollinators. And you can see in the background some Queen Anne's lace and a number of other things. You probably can't determine the seed heads, but there are to her back. There is a large plant of that butterfly Asclepias that still has some green pods on it. But encourage those young people, get them out into the garden, introduce them to nature. These kids love it. Okay, the next one, let's go to that. This is further down that area. You can see where I took the picture previously of the yarrow. And then in front of that is the lavender. There's also bearded iris, which I'm going to talk about in a later seminar, along with some other queens of the garden with these bearded iris. Unfortunately, they're the reblooming ones, so they rebloom in the fall. But I feel like I have to take a chair and sit it out there and savor them while they're in bloom because they're so short lived, but nevertheless, queens in the garden. For me, lavender is a have to have. I absolutely love the fragrance and the bees. Oh my, these, they just rock with bees when they come into bloom. I do not trim them back now. If something looks a little winter burned, and David and I are going to talk next Tuesday webinar on what to do in the garden right now and what not to do in the garden right now, and winter injury or winter damage, and what do you do about that. So I hope you all will tune in because David is full of information along all of this and deals with it at the plant clinic a great deal. So I think it'll be a good show. Where lavender is concerned, if it looks a little beaten, leave it alone. Don't be cutting it back or doing anything to it. It will bloom and bloom well. It'll come out from the base even. But with that first bloom, enjoy it. And it dries beautifully. So you can cut it. Even if you cut it late, it retains the fragrance. But when you cut it back after that bloom has finished and is no longer attractive, cut it just barely into the green. Never cut lavender back into bare wood. It will not have buds come out below that, okay? So cut it all the way back and it will be beautiful and green. It'll put up new growth and then it will rebloom in the fall. So that's how you treat it. Lavender has to have excellent drainage. The next picture, please. Here you can see the little California poppies at the edge. They are literally growing in the edge of that gravel because they love that and they love the good drainage and they are a wonderful companion for the lavender. There are several varieties of lavender. Some are tall, some are short. I like both, okay? And in the following picture, you can see that this is the end of that first season of bloom. And I have cut a lot of those stems. I've cut it back into the foliage, not very deeply, but enough that that's going to force new growth out behind there. And what am I going to do with the ones that I cut? Well, they're wonderfully fragrant. You can fill a bowl with the blossoms, and even if they're past their peak, they'll retain that fragrance for a very long time. Some of the little ones actually braid them, and that's fun. So you can really enjoy your lavender, but you do have to baby it. It will not grow, and it needs sunshine, okay? This gets at least 7 hours of sunshine a day. So it doesn't have to have sunshine, daylight to dark, but it needs 7 hours of direct sun. The next picture is one of my absolute favorite plants in the garden. This is digitalis, or foxglove. Digitalis was a heart medicine. I don't know who decided was the right amount to use in those early days. Now it's produced in the labs, okay? But this is a biennial. That means it usually grows in the late summer or fall and blooms in the spring, or you plant it now, it grows through and hopefully will bloom this year, but otherwise will live over and bloom next spring. So I've had this going in my garden for years. I can't remember when I didn't grow it. Okay. And this is growing in an area where it only gets probably dappled light through the day, but only maybe 3 hours of sunshine in the later afternoon, and it thrives. It seeds itself heavily. I actually have to pull up or move if I have the space. But getting it started and then saving the seeds so that you always have some insurance. If it doesn't seed the way you want it to, you've got some insurance there that you can seed it elsewhere. And you just remove the excess. And this is easy to do. The reason I've talked about removing excess for most things is most of these extra plants are very easy to remove, with the exception, as I said, of something like bronze fennel, which has a taproot, and that's a little different. Okay, so you have to realize, okay, I'm planting this now, I'm going to have to deal with it, okay? But this is how I use this. Now, when this is completely finished flowering, I'm not going to leave all those standing up because it's not terribly attractive. I am going to choose the colors of the best and leave 2 or 3 of them standing for those seeds to harden off and develop and me to save and shake around. I'll literally shake those wherever I want them to be. And since I have a lot of shade, I can shake them in a lot of different places. But I will remove and or cut way down low, and sometimes they'll be almost perennial. Sometimes they'll rebloom. But you don't have to save all of that when it begins to look ugly, and it will. You cut it back and just leave enough to save the seeds for later on. Okay. Now, where these seeds are concerned, and we're talking about some of these beautiful plants, we have all of these on hand right now. If you like them, I highly recommend that while the selection is excellent right now, that you come in and buy them. Hopefully, these hardy ones, you'll go ahead and find a spot where you want some of these to be. Just scratch the soil a little bit. Come back to me for a minute, Tanny. Just scratch the soil a little bit. You don't have to make it deep. I like to sprinkle in a little bit of the Plantone and or Biotone. These are organic. They are very slow release. These plants don't like a heavy feed. Excuse me. Heavy feed. They will put on too much top growth, green growth, and not as many flowers. So these organics are absolutely perfect. So you can, and one of my absolute favorite tools, and I just spoke to James, who was downstairs, because we're low in this particular one. It's a particularly good, what we used to call Cape Cod reader. It's better than the old-fashioned Cape Cod weeders. But you can just pull the soil a little bit, sprinkle in a little bit of the organic fertilizer, mix it just in the last top inch or two of the soil, plant your seeds, cover them lightly, and a thing to cover them with is leaf growth. And as I said, we sell that by the bag, and it's fine enough to put 1/2 inch on top. You don't want a whole lot because these things don't like to be covered heavily. And just kind of watch over it, because as soon as it warms up a little bit, they'll begin to grow and they'll bloom this year. And they'll bloom heavily before the summer annuals come into place. And so that's why I love these plants so much. And as far as weeding, you're going to have some weeds in between these because the weeds are going to blow in. They always do. This is a great weeder. Once you can actually see what's there, and don't try to do it until they're up and you can see. But when you know there's a weed there, you can snatch it out with this little weeder. I love it. I have to have a kneeling pad, which I have some. I didn't bring one up today, that I kneel on and snatch it out. Okay, so that's a good one to do. And the next picture, Danny. If you don't have an area where you feel that lavender will get the type of drainage that it needs, or you have difficulty growing lavender, this is a wonderful perennial substitute. It's Nepeta, Nepeta, Nepeta. Catmint, some people call it. This in full bloom, when the bloom is finished, you cut it back by maybe a third. It will rebloom. And then if you cut that back by about a third, it will rebloom the third time. So you'll get 3 periods of long bloom out of Nepeta. It is a perennial. It doesn't seed itself around, not for me anyway. And something else that you're seeing in this picture, and this one happens to be here in our display gardens at Fair Oaks, is 2 different types of allium. The large drum allium that has already bloomed and is now a tan color, and the little allium that will come into bloom later, okay? Neither of which, well, there's some light seeding going on with the little one that you see that's still green right now, but not so with the larger bulbs. I wish they did, but I've never had them reseed. And in the next picture, please, we have in that same garden, as a part of that little garden, and this is a small garden out there. I would say it's 40 feet long and maybe varying widths, but the widest place perhaps 25 feet. And you have what I showed you in the front, which is the Nepeta and the allium. And then mingled in the back, you've got the echinacea, a couple of different colors of echinacea. The purple that you're seeing is perovskia, and it will bloom for a long period of time. You can snip it back and it will rebloom. You can see the Rudbeckia herdia in the background. So these are places in between that in your home ground. If you chose to, you can also add the seeds of some of these hardy annuals. I'm trying to show a few places where you can actually seed in those annuals. It can be in smaller spaces. What I showed you originally is a quite large space. But the next one is again in my own property. And it is a space where I have a lot of daffodils. And the daffodils are growing in front of a border that is primarily camellias and holly. And underneath and around those is a wonderful fern, a lot of fern and some hosta. Then that center part of that bed is daffodils, which I totally enjoy. Bring a lot of those into the house to enjoy. But you have to let that foliage go yellow so that it will continue to produce a beautiful bulb and bloom again the following spring. Now, you can certainly work some of this organic. The best possible times to fertilize those bulbs is as they are coming out of the ground. And you can use this plantone to gently work it into the ground and a little bit later water it in, okay? And that's when it uses fertilizer to produce next year's bulb, okay? In front of that is areas that I have seeded in some of these hardy annuals. And particularly, I have used pansies and the tiny little pansy calabricoa. in that area, but this is a good place to do California poppies. I try to do other things in this bed because I'm doing a lot of these things in the big bed that I showed you. And I think in the next picture, it shows you as it's getting established. There are also perennials that come and join those pansies. Later, I will seed in alyssum. I love the alyssums, okay? And the deer don't usually munch on the alyssums. Now, they do go after the pansies. They really don't bother most of these things that I'm talking to you about. I'm not going to say they're deer resistant, but they're not the first things that the deer eat by any stretch, okay? Snapdragons is another one that I did that will take the cool soil and loves it. And they love to grow. And I love to grow. I'll plant some in that we have the plants in the nursery to get a head start. But I like to plant the really tall snapdragons from seed. Here I have some Nepeta, and I have some other perennials coming along. There will be echinacea later, a different type of iris. And as I said, there's a lot of violas, a lot of pansies, and later I'll do sedums and other low growing annuals in that area. Okay. This is another favorite plant. So I need to talk just a little bit about the summer annuals because they're important to add into that. And I don't plant some of these salvias from seed because they are specific salvias that we have in the annual section with a head start that I like to use in containers as well as spotty in the soil. But the little purple flower that you see is Gomphrena, Gomphrea, Gomphrena. And it dries by itself. It's absolutely beautiful. Blooms all summer long, but this is not a hardy annual. And those salvias are not hardy annuals. They need to be put in fall. I use and will continue with these and go through these pretty quickly because I want to leave a little time for questions, Danny. So let's do the next one. Containers, Calabricoa, petunias, summer, wonderful for the pollinators. In the following picture, this is a thing that I view from my front porch rocking chair. And it's a great place to seed in spottily some of those hardy annuals and also to go back and plant in some of the summer annuals. And above that are the plants that I've enjoyed over the winter. And I'm going to talk with David next week a little bit about what's going on in those containers right now and what can we do about it. But those are areas where you can find to tuck in some of these hardy annuals and be so pleased. The next picture, we have Clara's little sister, Lydia, who we gathered some flowers to take into the house. The little girls made arrangements and we can enjoy them inside. The following is the results of what I did with some of those arrangements. And unfortunately, I didn't put in what they did, but they were very attractive. These are the lavender and the yarrow and the verbena bonariensis, but they could be dried too and dried very easily. In the next picture, this is just in a teacup, bringing in and enjoying them, not just in the garden, but inside. And this is a method of deadheading, which means that you are going to have a longer period of bloom when you do that. This is the larkspur. It's the what people used to call ragged robin. And it's actually, I do have some of those seeds up here too. Cornflowers is another thing that people call them bachelor's buttons. I love the blue ones mixed in with a few zinnias. But that's in a teacup. Now, the next picture is showing you the beginnings done in Oasis because these stems are not terribly sturdy. You don't want to put it in a heavier foam. So Oasis is good for this. And I put in a line of some branches, and this is how I started this big arrangement, which I have in my entry right now. And this is the third year that I have enjoyed it. And I grouped these in bundles in my hand, put a rubber band around them, because as those stems dry, that rubber band shrinks and they don't fall out. And then I put them with a paper clip on a coat hanger and put them in a dry place out of the sun, and they dry beautifully. And actually, the results of that are in the next picture. And this is what is in my entry today. So I hope that that will inspire you to try some of these things, that you enjoy them outside, inside, in different ways. And now, Sally, do we have some
Oh,
questions?
all right, we sure do. Just a reminder to everybody, please type those questions in. We have about 15 minutes, so we'll take as many as we can get to, or we'll just keep going until we've taken all of them. So I'll start at the top. Peg, your first question is about the newspapers and the cardboards. And I know we've had this question in the past, but I can't remember what you said about it. Is there any concern about the inks in the newspaper? I would think the unmarked cardboard would be cleaner.
There's no problem, because the inks used today are very different than they used to be. So I have been assured many times that there is no problem with that.
Okay,
Not
gotcha.
even with the funny papers.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was like. I know that it's fine. Like I remember, I think that it's fine, but I can't remember what the reason
Right.
was for it.
And they do
Um,
eventually disintegrate, but they last through the season. And it's wonderful, because boy, it does make a difference with the weeding. And sometimes you have to do it in smaller spaces, and so that it won't grow all in there. You may have to do a little weeding in between, but it's minimal.
okay, that's great. I've got to try this at my own house. All right, next question. What condition do poppies need? So what are the preferred condition for poppies?
For the poppies, they need good drainage. They have to have some sunshine, a minimum of 6 hours of direct sun. Give me morning, mid, or late. Okay. They can take all day sun, but drainage is the issue. If you remember back to the pictures, and we're at the top of that hill, and they were actually growing in the gravel, which has soil underneath it, of course. And in that tippy top where I wanted superb drainage, I worked a lot of compost in years ago, and some 3/8 inch gravel and some sand thoroughly worked into that top several inches. And that's why I can grow all those poppies. I can grow all that lavender. Excellent drainage.
Okay, okay. I got a comment. Today's ink is made with soy. That's
It's
the
what?
ink for the newspapers is made with soy.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Um, okay, next question. Okay, this is actually, let me go back to the one. Okay. You may know this, Peg. If you don't, it's fine. But David has talked about winter sowing of seeds. Do you know, does he start he starts vegetables in the ground in the winter?
I
He talked
am
to you about
not going to, this is how you do. I'm talking about winter sowing in the ground.
in the ground.
Walk away from it, okay?
What has, okay.
What you're talking about now is
Yes.
the current thing that over the last couple of years, particularly, has gotten to be quite popular, where you are winter sowing like in a milk jug.
Yes, I know
You
he's
cut
done that.
halfway,
Okay.
and the top is somewhat open so that water can get into there. And these things are growing outside
It's like a
with
little greenhouse.
like a little greenhouse. Yes,
Okay.
I have not done that. I don't have the milk jugs, and I just didn't want to go out collecting milk jugs. I prefer I prefer to take the
Put
lazier
them in the
way.
ground and walk away.
I want to grow these things in the ground, I absolutely love them. And then I have some lights and I have lovely sliding glass doors that I put it in front of. And I put a few seeds of those early vegetables, and now is the time to do that. And we have those seeds. And then a little later, I didn't mention to you, but a little later, I will, once the ground's warmed up, I will plant cosmos. I'm telling you the ones that I absolutely love, or can't be without. I have to have nasturtiums. And you can, I don't use chemicals on these. I use chemicals very judiciously, and certainly not on the things that I eat. I eat nasturtiums, has to have warm soil. Start a few inside. Cosmos likes warm soil. I love to plant those in the garden directly. You can plant a few inside, or we sell beautiful plants of these too. Celosia can be seeded in outside. We sell lovely celosia plants, but I have to have a lot of zinnias. And I like the ones we sell here. I may use them at the front of the border, but I love these tall blooming cut and come. Bennery's giant blend. They're the ones that I like to dry and to use in fresh arrangements.
Yeah, I love zinnia.
But I'm not going to go there with how do you do the winter seeding, because
Yeah,
I know how to do it, but I haven't done it.
that's where I think the question was like, is that the same process? And you're right. I remember now. It was in a it was in a jug.
It's
It was different.
totally different. This is
Um,
in the ground.
okay, next question. So many types of lavender. Do you have any particular recommendations?
There are some absolutely beautiful lavender out there, and there's some newer cultivars also. And the old fashioned shorter ones, I say just come in and look them over and take your pick. There's
Gotcha.
one called Phenomenal that is phenomenal, and it's the taller growing one. But I'll bet there'll be some new varieties this year too.
Okay, next question. Oh, this is a good one because I thought I might be having this problem and I may not have been, but thought I did. If I sow seeds shallowly, will birds eat them? Are there any seeds in particular that might happen with?
Not normally. I
Okay,
haven't had a problem. When I seed these in, I just cover them very lightly,
okay,
and um, and I haven't had a problem with that.
okay, that's good. Um, Now, okay, this is an interesting one, and I'm not sure if it's something that because I know this some of this stuff can turn into it could be a whole class of its own. But here's the question. Peg, first of all, are you familiar with the Mount Cuba Center and their study on native plants?
Yes, yes, I
Okay.
can.
So the question is, um, I may have timed my visits to Maryfield wrong, but I haven't seen many of the most recommended Mount Cuba Center cultivars for echinacea at Maryfield. Is it possible to get more of those varieties in stock? So I guess the question here is if you want a particular variety of echinacea, do we carry any of those? Is it possible to request
Well,
them?
well, you can ask one of our perennial department if they can get them. We're pretty much limited to the varieties that our numerous suppliers have, and they pretty generally are aware of the Mount Cuba experiments
Yeah, I
and
know a lot of members of our team
trials.
are really,
Yeah,
it's a cool, a lot
trials.
of us are really into the Mount Cuba stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so when they are available, we do carry them. Okay. And every year there's new varieties that come out. And maybe it takes a little time also, which you may not realize. And a lot of times magazines love to talk about the really new stuff, but some of that really new stuff has not had time in the industry to have enough to sell
Suppliers. Yeah.
and say, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If, for instance, you pick up this copy and you say, out of this trials, this is the best poppy.
Mhm.
Well, it's going to take a while from best trial to get that into the industry in enough quantity that it's available. Okay, is if that's a little bit of an explanation as to why we may not have all of the latest Mount Cuba plants.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'd say always come in and talk to us and see if it's something we can get. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, okay, next question. Cosmos. Do you have any suggestions for getting Cosmos to grow?
Absolutely have no problems with Cosmos. And I did bring up, though I particularly love the white, but there's some beauties out there, okay? Cosmos are very easy from seed, and they're not as persnickety about the drainage thing, okay? None of these like totally wet feet for long periods of time, but they'll grow and tolerate a lot of conditions, and they'll all grow as long as they get 6 hours of sunshine, direct sunshine. And some of them will grow with good dappled light all day. But cosmos are very easy. They don't like cold soil, although I do have them drop their seeds and they stay there until the weather warms and then they come up. But you can seed these direct.
Okay.
Or I don't want to start my annuals that are not hardy indoors until I'm a little later than most people because I don't want them to get leggy. So I won't start these inside until the second or third week of March.
Okay. This is
That
our
works.
last question. So if anybody else has them, send them in now. I started lavender from seeds and I have two plants that are about 10 inches now. I've been babying them. How
Oh,
best do I plant them outside?
oh, well, that's good to talk about proper planting. Certainly don't do that yet. Let the soil dry out a little bit. Find that place where it does get a minimum of 6 to 7 hours of direct sun and where you know that they're going to have good drainage. Okay. If you have an area that you know drains reasonably well, you don't want to just do one little space and put your gravel or put your sand or put your particularly leaf grow and work it in and work it up. You don't want to create a bathtub either, that it's easy for that to run into that and sit. So it's almost better to put a small amount of that kind of stuff where you know that it's going to have good drainage. And I give it so that it doesn't, it's been inside right now, right? So it's not hardy outside, it's not accustomed to the cold. Wait until later March and harden it off a little bit and then plant it. And anytime you're planting, people don't really understand watering the way we would like them to. Believe it or not, sometimes even us, those of us who've done a lot of planting, don't get the watering right either, okay? But as we'll talk about more on Tuesday, if it rains a small amount, many people think it rains a lot and then that settled in. So when you plant a plant out, you can't just depend upon the rain. You plant it in, you water it well to settle all the soil around the roots and keep them moist. And then you check that soil every 3 or 4 days. You don't go out there and water it again every day. That's too much water. You check that soil, and if you think, oh my goodness, that's beginning to dry out, that's when you soak that thoroughly again and then back off and not water. And for that first season, you're going to have to check it in the summertime. You may not have to water any more than once every week or two, but you still need to water if you have a dry spell. So understanding the watering is important and understanding how to improve our clay soil, which is good stuff, but it needs to be lightened. Okay. And leaf grow is one of the best possible ways to do that. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Right. That is all for our questions, Peg, and it is 1 o'clock on the dot. So we had
Oh,
good timing. Do you have anything you want to close with before we wrap up?
just, I can't tell you how much I enjoy these plants. And even if you, yes, I showed you large areas, but even if you have small areas, you can still grow some of these plants. So right now, while our varieties are so readily available, come in and buy them and try them. Okay,
Perfect. All righty. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
thank you.
And please do check our schedule because we have a pruning class this Saturday and a couple of webinars next week. So thank you all. Thank you, Peg. I'll see you later.
Yes, thank you,
All right.
Zoe.
Bye.
Bye bye.